right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as important as your money. Excited to be here today. I'm with David Prescott. Welcome. And this is our first time actually doing a remote session, so we're excited to be here. And what a gorgeous background with the planes taking off and the facility. And clients might be wondering, well, why are they at an airport? Why are they at a hangar? But today we wanted to spend some time with David and really talk about his transition from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, and then getting into the nonprofit space, which is why we're here today, which is an excellent thing. So welcome today. How's your day going?
Good, great.
Well, we've got a lot of good questions for you, and we want to center them around, obviously, what we think is important for our clients to listen to, and that's the entrepreneurial world. And we get asked a lot of times the questions about, what do I have to do to be an entrepreneur, and what do I have to do, or I'm afraid to leave my corporate world and stuff. But that's something you found yourself in not too long ago, where you made that decision to jump to the out of the corporate world into the entrepreneurial space. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what you found was the difference between the two?
Sure. I mean, it's a question I get asked all the time of, I want to be a business owner, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I think I'm an entrepreneur. Look, if you want to be a business owner or an entrepreneur, be prepared. It's a lot more work. It's the reverse of what people set their expectations. They think being in charge and running a business is sitting in an office with your feet up and golfing all the time. That's not the case. You sign up to be an entrepreneur or a business owner because you have a passion to grow things and build things. I start off most interviews with most executives that I bring on my company is saying, look, it's it's the reverse of what many people think. I'm not the top of the pyramid, I'm actually the bottom of the pyramid. I like explaining that, my job is at the bottom of the pyramid is making sure that I'm able to do all the, unusual tasks, everything from clearing snow to fixing a robot or whatever, so that everybody else above me can do their normal day-to-day job. One guy came in and he's like, Dave, I don't get it, why are you outside, plowing the snow? Why don't you have one of your warehouse guys do it? If I had my warehouse guys do it, then they wouldn't be shipping product to our customers. Those customers pay our bills, make income. I'd be taking revenue from myself. Why would I hurt my own company?
Yeah.
Just because I'm too lazy to go out and shovel snow.
I think it's important for listeners to understand too, is that some of your experience came through serving in our military. So once again, want to thank you for that service. We honor vets and we love just being able to emphasize that when somebody is in the military, they get a lot of skill sets that help them out. And I'm sure some of that helped you transition into the corporate world. And then I think you had mentioned earlier that entrepreneurs, you are an entrepreneur or you're not. Right?
That's correct. You either are, it's very interesting when I hear colleges and universities offering, degrees on being an entrepreneur. I was asked before, did I learn how to be an entrepreneur in the Navy? No, I think when I take a look back, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Everything from running a lemonade stand when I was a child to having a paper route, for the Minneapolis Star and Tribune. I was taught at an early age from my dad to focus on customer service and have great customer service, and whether or not that was selling lemonade or delivering newspapers. Boy, I was pissed at him all the time. Boy, it's freaking 20 below zero snow, and nope, you're going to wrap every newspaper in a plastic bag and hand deliver them to the door. Well, but that's that resulted in over doubling the size of that paper route, just simply because customers weren't used to having that level of service. Well, now you transition all the way to the company I sold, Integra Optics, when we talked to our customers and found out from our customers why did they continue doing business with Integra versus doing business with other competitors. It's customer service.
Yeah, and that's where your industry came from, right? You're a nuclear engineer in the Navy, and then got into the fiber optics and that type of industry, and then saw a niche. And you filled the niche and provided the service, to the individuals and grew the company. And I think a lot of times people view an entrepreneur as, I'm an employer, and I'm just going to go and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But entrepreneurship doesn't mean that you're not like maybe selling your practice or your business a couple of years down the road and then going to do things that you have a passion in. And that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur is you can make money doing anything. And as long as you apply yourself and you have the good fundamentals, right, which is understanding where profit comes from and what the real bottom line means, that allows you to transition in things. So you started your own company. How many years did you run? Did you run the optics side of the business?
So I owned it for about 15 years.
Okay, so 15 years in, then you were given the opportunity to sell the business. Was that expected? Was that not expected?
No, that was totally unexpected. That was not the path I was on or not my desire. I had started about 2 years before that of looking at different ways to significantly grow the business. One of those paths was to talk to some of my competitors who had customers in segments that we weren't currently selling to. So what was amazing was sitting down with some competitors, going through their customer lists and realizing that we had little to no overlap, because that's one thing that I found is unusual, with some people when they look to buy businesses. They'll look to buy businesses with competitors, that are competing for the exact same customers. Well, you're not necessarily setting yourself up for growth if you're competing for the exact same customers that you could go get yourself. I chose to go after businesses that had completely different market segments that we weren't currently in.
It's value add then, right?
Right. So it would allow me to expand faster. I can go out and hire those salespeople, but it takes time to get into those market lines. So we identified a few things that this company needed to work on and needed to clean up before I was in a position to purchase them for the market value that they desired. Within that time period, I was approached by a private equity firm, and the guy was great. He was like, "Look, I know you're not looking to sell. Just let us come in and at least have a conversation with us." Said okay, and that company had been in the market of purchasing my competitors, and they made a compelling argument. They said, "Look, it's very clear you're at the top of the game. When all of your competitors make it clear that you're the market leader in our segment, then clearly we need to be talking to you guys." And they fulfilled their obligations too of purchasing some of my other competitors. And when they slid that piece of paper across the table, it met the requirements my wife said I had to meet.
That's great. A lot of times we'll discuss whether we're doing educational shows and webinars for high school kids that might be listening and things along that lines. And one thing we always emphasize with them is in life, there's a thing as delayed gratification. Like a Michael Jordan will go and he'll train hard and he'll practice, but he won't be getting much income off of it or pay off of it, right? And until same thing like an entrepreneur, right? You're putting all your effort and time into growing something or improving something or perfecting something, and it's that delayed gratification, which in your case was fairly early in life.
So I like how you open up that segment, and that's a great segment to to make sure to refocus people on. My gratification doesn't come from how much I've made or how much money I've earned. My gratification comes from the building side and the sheer excitement of selling something and seeing a customer satisfied with our product. It surprises people when I tell them the first 3 years I ran Integra, there's some of my salespeople who did phenomenally well. First 5 years, one of my salespeople was probably one of the highest paid sales guys in the capital region. I myself, I was probably one of the lowest paid salespeople or lowest paid people in the capital region. And people were rather surprised. It's because my focus wasn't on paying myself. My focus was on driving and building a company. In fact, when I did my application to be a veteran-owned business, we had to answer to the Veterans Administration for, because you have to submit the salaries of everybody in your company. I wasn't even in the top 10 of paid, personnel in the company. And we had to justify and prove why.
Yeah, and that's, and that's the, thing that a lot of people don't see is they, like you said earlier, they think that, oh, I'm going to come in and the money's just going to come in and I'm going to be at my desk. And, sometimes it's that, really hard work, down to the boots on the ground type effort that, kind of self-rewards.
Well, and you go into another piece too that, again, I see commonly with business owners. You can choose to make a business a lifestyle business where you're pulling as much money out of the company as you can, as fast as you can, but you're leaving very little money in the business to grow the business. I chose the other route, which is I wanted a growth business. I left as much money in the company as possible, and that rewarded me significantly when it came to be purchased. The company that acquired me was a very shrewd private equity firm. Most people have heard the stories, oh, private equity firms trying to buy your company for as little as they can. Yeah, they are. You're going to try to buy a product for as cheap as you can buy it for too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just good business sense. But because I built such a strong company, I had such a solid warehouse of inventory, my competitors chose to keep as little inventory as possible, whereas the strength of my company was having the inventory. The private equity firms significantly rewarded me for that. In fact, the number my wife said I was okay to say okay to, their number was significantly higher than that. I didn't even have to go back and negotiate.
Yeah, and inventory is key, especially now with COVID and I
Correct.
mean, just having that to fall back on, which is great. So, let's get in a little bit on the transition from, I guess, the corporate world to the nonprofit world, because I find that fascinating, because there's a lot of nuances in there, but there's also a lot of differences in there. So we'll get started in that in 1 second. But right now we're in a part of our show. It's called Community Spotlight, and this is where we highlight a local business in the area that we work with and we have some good relationships with. And today we're going to talk about Herzog Law Firm. So Herzog Law Firms, they're down on Corporate Woods Boulevard. They're at 7 South Woods Boulevard, Suite 301, Albany, New York. Their phone number is 518-465-7581. You can call Jane Marie Schaefer down there. David or Dan are the other partners in the practice there, but great law firm. Check them out if you're looking for estate planning or any type of wills or trusts to be done. So that's our community spotlight for today. But getting back to our conversation, so you made a jump from corporate world. Well, you made a lot of jumps, right? You jumped from lemonade stand to paper route to Navy to the corporate world. But at that end, when in the corporate world where you were transitioning out of your business, you've sold it to your competitor. Was there always the aviation part in your background that you could see yourself doing something in aviation, or was it something that came after you sold the business?
No, I think that's a good question. I think a lot of people say, what should you be doing in life, where you should be working? You should always be working on something you're happy with doing. I've loved aviation my whole life. So everything I've done has always been, how can I stay close to aviation, or how can I be around it? Yes, my passion when I joined the Navy was to be on an aircraft carrier, so I could watch the planes take off and land, because, I wasn't able to, I didn't qualify to be a pilot at the time. I ended up on a cruiser, so nowhere near airplanes, so that didn't really work out. When I started in the telecommunications industry, I utilized my own private aircraft whenever I could. Even with Integra Optics, I utilized aircraft in order to get to our customers faster. So it was a natural transition for me to, obviously I set the business up at an airport on the runway.
Yeah.
So I could be as close to aircraft as possible. So for me, that was a natural transition.
So the nonprofit itself is through the Prescott Foundation, correct? And it's dedicated to restoring and educating people on historic aircraft, World War II specifically, or?
So what I found is you gotta keep you can't be a hodgepodge all over the place. You got to stay focused so that the messaging is clear. So I focused on World War II aircraft, just to keep some consistency around our messaging.
Yep. And so our viewers can understand. Behind you we have our Corsair. You want to talk a little bit about this aircraft, maybe where it came from, and kind of what was involved in getting it to the shape that it's in today.
So this Corsair is not the one I currently own. This Corsair is on loan to us from the Collins Foundation. So this Corsair is a night fighter version of the Corsair used later in World War II. It's an interesting aircraft because the United States, it was actually approved, by the Navy before we even entered the war. So it was a 400-mile-an-hour airplane, from the beginning of the war all the way throughout. It was primarily used by the Marine Corps throughout most of World War II. And then the Navy started using it near the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of nicknames associated with this aircraft.
Yes.
One of the fascinating features about it, obviously, is it's probably one of the largest engines, propeller-driven engines in any type of aircraft, at the time.
So that's a good engineering point that I like talking to a lot of engineering students about. So when the Corsair was developed, at the same time as the P-47 Thunderbolt was developed for the Army Air Corps, at that point in time, Pratt & Whitney had released the largest piston engine, aircraft engine at the time. And so the engineering order is build us a fighter plane around this, the largest engine that had been developed at the time in 1940. And so the engineers, for the Navy fighter, came up with the Corsair, because people look at the Corsair and it has the bent wings, then that look like a gull. Well, what that was for was to allow the landing gear to be shorter, so it was easier for them to absorb the impact of landing on a carrier deck, but yet still have the largest propeller that was available to harness the horsepower of that engine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably an 18-cylinder, I think,
Yes, it is.
in there, and they have a later model, right, too, which I think is an F2G. That's I think 28 cylinders,
Yes.
About an extra 1,000 horsepower. But just having these in the Albany area are just phenomenal. And one of the things that I find is that if you don't teach history, it gets lost.
Correct.
My grandfather was an engineer on a B-29. We talked a little bit about that earlier. But what do you see as far as the outreach in that world to kids and to schools perhaps and things like that?
So we actually just met with the director from MySci over in Schenectady to start looking at some more of those programs. But following along in that aspect, I fully believe with where our youth are today on the way they learn. They don't pick up books. They don't read books. That's not the society we have any longer. Everything's hands-on, touching, and seeing interactive. So everything we have here all flies. We take them out on a regular basis to either start them up and run them or actually take them flying. The Jeeps that we have here, or we have a World War II ambulance that's in restoration right now, those are all driving, living, moving artifacts. And the one piece that everybody walks away from after they've seen a plane fly or hear it start up is, oh, wow, that's a sound now that I remember. Just the other day on Tuesday, we took, or Monday morning, we took one of the planes flying, and we consistently got texts from people all around the capital region, because as soon as they hear that now, they look up because they know that's one of these planes.
Yeah, very distinct sounds.
Yes, and everybody's like, oh, I remember the smell, and those are, when you talk to different psychologists and therapists, they're like, yes, sights and sounds are things people remember far more than something they read about.
So what do you notice is the biggest difference between the corporate world and jumping into the nonprofit space? Obviously you're dealing with staff and volunteers, kind of two separate entities.
Wait, there's a difference?
Well, I would assume, right?
No, it's still managing people. It's still leading people. You still have to work off a budget. The biggest difference is in the not-for-profit world. And trying to maintain these is you don't have an income stream or an income, for Integra it was easy. For operating a for-profit business.
Yeah, you're not selling these every day.
No, there's a widget we sell, and if I want to make more money, you just go sell more widgets. Here, it's always interesting and challenging to try to come up with different, strategies around raising money to cover different costs to keep them going. The thing that throws people off, not in a negative way, but it surprises them, when I tell them, is, the Corsair burns about 90 gallons an hour on demonstration flights. The B-25, when we take it up for a flight, it burns about 150 gallons an hour of fuel. Before you take into account that they all burn about a gallon an hour of oil per engine.
So one of the things you've done here is people can come in, they can host events here,
yes.
They can rent the space out, and all those proceeds go to help restoring the aircraft and making sure that continues. What other events do you do here? What are some things that you'd like to promote?
So we do corporate events here, but another common thing is brides rent out the venue for weddings because of the uniqueness of the space and its industrial look. And sometimes people ask, well, what do you do with the proceeds? And I'm like, it just goes into helping us cover the costs of keeping these planes in the air.
Yeah, that's great. Now you mentioned you also have this plane over here behind us. You want to tell the viewers a little bit about this one?
So that's a T6 Texan. That is the advanced trainer that all Allied aircrewmen used for advanced flight training. So all fighter pilots, all bomber pilots would have trained on a T6 Texan. That plane was so versatile, in fact, that this one happens to be a 1943, but this one was sent to the British under the Lend-Lease program. This one actually operated until 1995 with one of the Commonwealth countries of England. It operated with the South African Air Force. Everybody's like, till 1995? Well, in 1995, apartheid hit, and apartheid canceled, when we embargoed against South Africa, it canceled the Lend-Lease program. The South Africans had to box this up and ship it back to the United States Army.
And these have been in a lot of different platforms, a lot of different countries across the world.
Yes.
And then the one that we don't see here is kind of the larger one, the B-25.
That's right next door, yes.
The Mitchell next
Yep.
door. And we're actually 80 years in. I think April 18th was the anniversary rate of Doolittle.
Correct.
And for history buffs that don't understand what that was, it was probably one of the best morale boosters that our country could have. Is right after Pearl Harbor had happened, really 4 to 5 months after the invasion of Pearl Harbor, we were able to bomb Tokyo. And how did we do that? We did that with a B-25 off of a carrier base, which is just a feat in itself.
Well, it was amazing because we took a light bomber, a medium bomber that was not designed to operate off an aircraft carrier, and a brilliant aircraft engineer, General Doolittle, who figured out a way to lighten the aircraft and be able to take off and prove that he could take off from a carrier. But the reason they struck Tokyo and other strategic targets within Japan was Japan felt through their expansion that they were untouchable. And that was a significant morale issue for Japan that led them into some bad military decisions afterwards by the fact that they were struck. At first they thought they were struck from China. We don't hear about the stories of how vicious the Japanese were after that strike, of further expanding into China to ensure that we didn't have bases to hit them from there. But that also caused them to aggressively go after Pearl Harbor, which we were able to have a decisive blow against the Japanese, and that was pretty much the turning point of the war.
Now that plane, you were telling me that's in renovation. That you're rehabbing that plane right now.
Correct. So we flew it over Pearl Harbor for the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II in 2020. The Navy took it on an aircraft carrier for us over to Pearl Harbor. We did the victory flights. It was great. Represented. You had the USS Arizona, which represents America's entry into World War II, because that's the famous photos and videos of it being struck during the raid on Pearl Harbor, to the USS Missouri, which is where the Japanese signed the Declaration of Surrender in Tokyo Bay with General MacArthur.
Yeah, really moving memorial for the Arizona, if you've ever gotten out there.
Oh, yes.
Just, I encourage all the listeners and viewers to really, if you get to Hawaii, definitely go to Pearl Harbor. It's very moving. It's very, very sombering, to know that, especially in Arizona, that the lives of so many seamen are still down there.
Correct.
Which is a good way that we can honor those things. What other nuances within the nonprofit world, do you find challenging, that maybe mirror either the corporate world or don't mirror the corporate world?
Some of the things that mirror the corporate world is it's still a business. It still has a budget you have to run on, and corporate governance that you still have to run it like a business. Challenges, again, you have a different product you're trying to sell, and the world is changing as far as how people see corporate sponsorships and donations. At the foundation, we choose to use a lot of tax tools that actually are very beneficial to some of our donors, which are it's a little bit different than the old school ways of just walking around with a coffee can and saying, hey, will you donate $1 here?
Yeah, and we had, you're going to be doing an event for the Northeast Kidney Foundation, somebody that I'm on the board for, so we do appreciate you for allowing us to come in and do that joint event, which is great. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you, your address, phone number, best contact?
Sure. You can find out all the information about us at hangar743.com. It tells you about the venue, gives an email address, forms to fill out, and phone numbers for us. We're available via appointment for tours for people that want to come in and tour the artifacts.
Okay, and is that mostly 7 days a week?
We try Monday through Friday mostly.
Well, you want a personal life a little bit?
We haven't gotten to the point yet that we have enough staff that are here on the weekends for weekends to make sense yet.
Okay.
We're coming out of COVID, so the world still isn't completely staffed yet.
And now if we have some listeners that perhaps aviation buffs, maybe have some skills centered around aircraft and stuff, can they reach out to you about volunteering?
We're always looking for volunteers that are passionate about keeping these planes in the air. In fact, we have one 72-year-old gentleman that drives here 4 days a week from Massachusetts to work on the planes with us.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So,
his only question was, do you need me to bring my own tool bag, or do you have tools there I can use?
I'm sure his tool bag's probably pretty extensive, I would imagine. So how many years have you been over here in this facility?
I've been in this facility about 15 years, 16 years, because I had it before I started in Integra. So this is obviously the B25 that we're in the middle of restoring.
You were saying this crashed recently?
So it crashed outside of Stockton, California. There was a fuel issue. The pilots ran out of gas short of the runway. But you know, now we have it back, and now it's the process of restoring it.
Yeah.
And you know, people ask me all the time, they're like, oh, why are you going through all the hassles of restoring it? Look, this is part of America's history. I mean, this plane flew in combat in Italy. Its last known bombing mission was a bridge in northern Italy, and at the end of the day, this is America's history. I just happen to be the curator for right now, but it'll pass on to somebody else's hands, you know, many years from now.
That's one good thing, is the amount of detailed record that the military keeps on every mission and every route. You probably can pull it up fairly easy.
Correct.
History book. So about how long will this process take?
It depends on how fast we can find the right people and how much time people can dedicate to it. Would it be great if we can get it done in 3 years? That's a realistic timeline. It could take a little bit longer. I hope it doesn't take too much longer.
And then it's finding the parts or fabricating them?
It's mostly fabricating. A lot of the parts are still out there. They're still available. We actually set up our own machine shop and you know, brought a machinist on board that we started our own machine shop because we know we're going to have to fabricate some of our own stuff.
Has 3D technology and stuff helped in any of that?
Most of the stuff's generally available, and as you can see, there are, you know, standard brackets and whatnot, so not really an area where 3D is really necessary yet for this. If we're in the engines and stuff like that, like there's some you know, some restoration guys when it comes to some of the German aircraft that just simply aren't available at all, or they're rebuilding some of those parts with 3D, you know, 3D technology.
And my great uncle was an engineer that would he'd build the target planes. He'd send up the little target planes to shoot at, and then they'd blow them up and he'd redo it. He says, most ungratifying work in the world.
You know, the nose from over here. This C-47 Placid Lassie, this actually flew on D-Day. It towed gliders on D-Day and then later on dropped paratroopers during Operation Market Garden. But people come in here and they're like, oh, you know, how much more work and restoration work does this need to do before it goes? No, this flies on a regular basis. In fact, it's leaving tomorrow.
What condition was it when you originally got it in?
So this is another foundation, the Tunison Foundation, that we work with. So we do maintenance for them. So we just do regular maintenance on it. So this plane's been in flying condition since World War II.
Oh wow! All right.
As you can see, the damaged parts, most of the stuff around is from the B-25. But we have a 1942 Jeep. Any of you guys Jeep fanatics?
My father is a little bit, but
well, if you take a look at the grill, that's the trademark of Jeep, right? You know, that you're very familiar with, and
but they're also built by like Ford. And
yes, that's exactly right. So Henry Ford is actually the one who designed the grill. The Jeep was actually a contract won by a small company out of Pennsylvania, the Bantam Corporation. The Army didn't believe that Bantam had the manufacturing capability to build the Jeep, so they handed the plans to Ford Motor Company and a larger company at the time called Willys Overland, which is why we know about the Willys Jeep, because Willys actually bought the plans at the end of the war and patented it to make it a civilian vehicle, but Henry Ford is the one who designed the grill to make it faster and easier to produce. So, but yes, this is a Ford GPW.
For the assembly line during World War II as well.
This is a TBM Avenger. It's a torpedo bomber. This one was used later in the war as a with a radar pod on it. This is the same type of airplane that President Bush was shot down in. President Bush was a torpedo bomber pilot. In fact, the first assignment of this aircraft was to President Bush's squadron when his squadron returned to the United States after he was shot down.
Oh wow! Now, what's the fuel consumption on something like the C-47.
The C-47 is more like 120 gallons an hour versus the B-25 more at 150 gallons of fuel an hour. As you see, we have one of our corporate sponsors, Pasanello Lubricants over in Troy. Helped us out with oil. The Bombay doors don't show it, but we're also a large corporate sponsor to Toys for Tots. We actually carried 32 pallets of toys over to Hawaii during COVID, which was a significant thing for Toys for Tots, knowing that the islands were shut down from tourists and everything at that point in time. So that was that was a significant thing for Toys for Tots for us to be able to get all those toys over there.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really enjoyed it. As always, you can find us at yourtimeyourmoney.net, 43 British American Boulevard, the Esley Group in Latham, New York, 800-222-3202. Check out the Hangar 743 at Albany Airport. So we're right here, so if you can hear the planes going behind us. But we thank you so much for spending time today, and hopefully some listeners can come and check out these great aircraft and enjoy their time. So as always, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.